Welcome back to Ground and Tech, folks, and today I am, of course, talking about the Xperia 5 II and whether it's still worth buying in 2022. Xperia is a brand that is derided quite a lot in the tech space, so a lot of people didn't think this phone was worth the asking price when it was released in 2020, let alone now. However, after watching videos from the likes of Juan and TK, I decided to give Xperia a shot, and I bought the Xperia 5 II at the end of that year. It was my first and my only Xperia so far. I was impressed from the off, and I still think it's a cracking bit of kit to have, even in 2022. And I should emphasize, for the right person. There's also a few caveats to mention. So first up, there is absolutely nothing wrong with the specs of this phone. It is still right up there. It has one of the best SoCs in the Snapdragon 865 and a smooth 21:9 120Hz screen. Not to mention that headphone jack and micro SD card support, Xperia being the only brand in the high end touting these features nowadays. The main issues people seem to have with this phone was the high price tag, no wireless charging, and cameras that weren't considered competitive enough. I'm going to try and break down the latter issue first. Xperias aren't aimed at general or casual consumers, however you want to frame them. People that are after a great auto camera, that want the computational wizardry that gives them all these fancy night modes and things. You can see an Xperia as a traditional camera. It's relying on you as the photographer. And while it does have a great auto mode in good lighting, an Xperia tends to take a very natural looking photo. It doesn't tend to boost colors like a lot of phones or alter the white balance to extremes. It's intended to be like a real camera, as I say, like it would be if you had a Sony Alpha, for instance. Sony's approach is entirely different. The interface is like a camera. To get the most out of it, you'll have to learn how to use it, and the more manual options it offers. It isn't a point and shoot for all situations. That's what a Pixel, iPhone, or Galaxy are for. First, you have to decide whether that is for you, and it's totally fine if it isn't. There's plenty of great options here for the camera enthusiasts out there, and for me personally, it's an entry point into learning about cameras and the settings. Eye detection autofocus is stunningly good, and works on the dogs too. Which is great for me because around 90% of my photos are of the dogs, as many of you will know. Milo's so sick and tired of me, he tends to look away when I point the phone at him now. That's how bad it is. Yeah. Sorry, Milo. Photos look great. This main wide-angle sensor is the same as what is used in the One Mark III and the One Mark IV, the latter of which is Sony's latest flagship. Sony don't over-process the images like those taken on other phones like Pixels, iPhones, and Galaxies. You do get a very natural look with quite realistic colors, I find. So we've got a little comparison here as well. So you have two photos. One is taken on the Xperia 5 II. And the other one is taken on the Pixel 6, so the same image on both, taken in the same conditions. The Pixel 6 is something that many regard as being the smartphone photography champ, especially in its price range. Nothing else comes close. As you can see in the Pixel shot, the light rays are basically eliminated and the shadows almost entirely gone. It tries to balance everything and can sometimes lead to a very flat-looking image with, how can I frame it, having less soul. I mean, it has plenty of detail. On its own, it looks completely fine, but that isn't what I saw. The Xperia shot, on the other hand, in my opinion, looks wonderful. It's exactly as I saw it, and that was taken with the auto mode. So it has a 70mm telephoto, and this needs good light, but you can get some fantastic images out of it. Obviously, it's not the strongest zoom. It's not going to compete with some of the higher-end phones now that have some mega periscope zoom lenses, but you can get some really great portrait shots out of it, and I do find that since starting to use the telephoto like this, I have basically stopped using portrait modes on phones, and it's at the point where now I feel like I have to have a telephoto lens on there for these portrait shots, because it just gives you much better results. The ultra-wide is also capable of some great shots, but it's a fairly standard setup, and again, you need good lighting, but like this image here, you can get some pretty cracking shots. I don't know why this cloud looks like it's been summoned by Team Rocket, but prepare for trouble. And as I said before, this isn't for everyone. Many people prefer the contrastier, punchy look from a Pixel in most situations. It's going to come down to what you want from your photography. Moving on to other complaints briefly. Wireless charging being omitted from the 5 series, for me, is still pretty strange. I I feel like it should have it now. Even the 5.3 does not have it. It's a non-issue for most. I don't think most people are that fussed about wireless charging per se. I think faster charging speed is probably something that people would prefer to have. But they have to make cuts somewhere. I mean, this phone is basically a smaller 1 series phone. You are getting the same camera setup, same internals generally in terms of the SoC. You do have less RAM, but that's not really going to make too much difference. So you're still getting a very high-end phone. And you can quite easily get this phone right now for under £300. I got this, I got my Xperia 5.2 at the start of, this is my second Xperia 5.2. I got this at the start of 2022 on a refurbished like new deal for £350 with a 12-month warranty, and it was literally like new. So you can get that even cheaper now, and for a couple of hundred more, you can actually get a 5.3 now. So there's plenty of availability for these phones, and you can get them at a very reasonable price. I don't think the price of the 5 Series is an issue, in my opinion. You know, people look to buy an Xperia with intention. They will get value for money because they're getting something that they want and need. But we should talk video a little bit. So we've got the Cinematography Pro app for those that want to dabble in cinema-grade videography. Some extra recording modes included, such as 4K 120 FPS, and a myriad of options, all shot in 21:9. Although I wish Sony had included some of these options in the standard camera app. You can work around this with the Videography Pro app, which launched with the Xperia Pro. Again, this is an app that does not come on this phone. You have to sideload it, which is a pain in itself. I'm going to get onto this issue a little bit later. And of course, you're not getting all the features of the app working as well. It still works with the main lens fine, but it's a problem when wanting to use different lenses, the front camera, those sorts of things. But it's still very handy having that Videography Pro app. You can adjust the audio input, white balance, a bunch of things that you can't do in the standard app, and then you don't have to use the Cinematography Pro app to get that 4K 120 and other features, which is a much more complicated app to use. So it's a nice in-between. It's much better for those that are wanting to sort of do vlogging and a bit of YouTube stuff. You can even stream from the app. So the live streaming feature that came to the Xperia 1.4 and that launched for the, got an update for the Pro I as well, you can still use that on the Xperia 5.2. I can understand the frustrations that many have with the software with Xperia, but they are doing a better job over time, but there are some things that I would like them to improve. So whilst we're speaking about software, which is one of my major gripes, they aren't supported for long enough. So we get 2 years of OS updates, which these days is not good enough, especially when you're paying a lot for a phone. Even the Pro I, which I think launched at like £1,600, you get 2 years of OS updates. I don't think that's enough. I think you need 3 minimum. The Nothing phone, which I'm using to record this video right now through my laptop, that gets 3 years of OS updates with 4 years of security. This is a new company, a brand new company. Sure, they've only got one phone, but it's a brand new company and they already do better on software support than Sony do. Obviously, we've got to see how things go long term. Yeah, I really, really want Sony to improve this. Then there's the fact that Sony do a little bit of an Apple type thing where the older models or the previous models don't get the features that the new phones have. Whereas if you have something like Pixel, you know that when the Pixel 7 comes out, your Pixel 6 will get those features if it has new features. And that's kind of how you want it to be, because that's good for consumers. If the phone can run it, it should have the features. Sony takes a similar approach to Apple in that they don't tend to give those features to their previous phones. Like I've already said with the Videography Pro app, that app should be on every single Xperia available that's still getting updates, because that app is by far and away the best video app that they have. So why not give it to all those people that have got Xperia 1.2s, 5.2s, 1.3s, 5.3s, that's probably the majority of their sales, and that app would work wonders for them. So I really think they need to reevaluate what they're doing with that, and they need to start pushing it to more people, because I think it's doing them damage over time, rather than just trying to entice people to the new phones with new features that everybody knows could easily run on the phones that are already out there. So unfortunately, that means that this Xperia 5.2, which got Android 12 early this year, will not get any more OS updates, which is one of the major downsides if you're looking at buying this phone now. Sure, it's still going to work. You're still getting all your app updates. You're still getting security updates. But now, I think probably for another year or so, it's going to work fine, but I still would have liked to see more support. I think we all would. I think it's a real shame. Now, something else that I love about this phone, that is the 21:9 aspect ratio screen. Now, I know to a lot of people it looks really weird. It's too slim, it's too tall, and a lot of the coverage, again, of that is very negative. Once you get used to it, though, it's amazing. And when you're using things like split screen, which works better on this than any phone out there when you're using SideSense to quickly split apps, and you can have preset apps. So I'll have YouTube at the top, Twitter underneath, or Spotify on top, and for watching a podcast, and then Twitter underneath. You know, you can go to your previous apps. So say you've been on Telegram, quickly just swipe across from the bottom as you do on Android, switch to Telegram. It doesn't affect the top portion of the screen. It's great. It's so intuitive. It works fantastically well, and it's one of my favorite things about it. I use it so much, and the great thing, because you've got that aspect ratio and it's so tall, is that when you've got like like YouTube or Spotify at the top playing the video, you still feel like you've got a lot of phone for scrolling through something like Twitter. And it's also worth noting that because of the aspect ratio, this phone feels so good to use with one hand. It feels like a compact phone. No other phone out there at this sort of size feels like that. A lot of them feel very wide. This phone is easy to use one-handed. The Xperia range is unique, and the 5 Mark II is still an exceptional bit of kit. It can be a very useful tool, as it has been for me. If you like the feature set, and you feel like you have a real use for it, you could still easily use this well into the future without issue for content creation purposes. Not a problem. If it's going to be your only phone, I would personally look at the 5.3 just for the improved software and an extra year of support. One feature that Sony does have that not many other manufacturers seem to have, at least not the mainstream brands, is HS power control, and that's heat suppression power control. I've spoken about this in one of my other Sony Xperia videos, but essentially it allows you to bypass the battery whilst plugging it into a charger, so the phone will run directly off of the power supply, and that allows the phone to run cooler. You know, so it's not pulling power from the battery whilst charging the battery at the same time, which increases heat, which then can increase the thermals for gaming, and you can have frame rate drops and things like that. It helps to keep things much cooler. It also helps in regards to the battery health. So you're not going to degrade that battery whilst using it in this respect. So my Xperia 5 II, I mean, I'm using the Nothing phone right now to record this video. The Nothing phone is plugged into the laptop and it's charging whilst I'm using it as a webcam. So that over time would degrade the battery health, whereas the Xperia can basically bypass the battery altogether. I can do a 5-hour stream when I'm playing a game. I will lose maybe 1% battery life. And that whole time, the battery is not being messed with. It's not pulling power from the battery. Obviously, you'll need to make sure you've got some sort of fast charger, which is like 18 watts for the Xperia 5 II. And laptops can often supply that and more these days, as mine does. So for content creation purposes, it's great, and you're not going to damage that battery health over time, which is very, very important. I'm hoping you found this useful. If you have an Xperia 5 II right now, how is your experience? If you're looking at buying one, is there anything else that you feel you need answering? If there is, drop a comment below. I'll be happy to respond. I really do appreciate you taking the time to watch this. Stay grounded, and I'll see you in the next one. And the 5 Mark II is still an